Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. I wanted to talk about how I ended up knowing that I was trans, or that I am trans. Because if any of you have followed me for a while, you've seen like old videos, and I'm not the same person anymore. And so I wanted to talk about this here. And there's a couple of reasons that I'm talking about this here that I feel are very important. I'm talking about this especially coming from a perspective of when I was younger. I was like a part of church, and church made me feel like it wasn't possible, and church wants you to fit in a box, essentially, right? If you're not already subscribed already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment, let me know what happened with you. I'd love to read your stories. But so in all reality, let me please make sure that I make this clear that I have always been trans. It just takes a state of awareness in order to know that. Specifically, I don't know if I should start from like the very beginning or what, but let's start from here. I've talked about, when I talk about spiritual stuff, how I grew up in the church. Now, we weren't at church like every Sunday or anything like that, but God was instilled in me from an early age. Just telling you this because I've recently found out that I am autistic, have OCD, and I have ADHD. And for all of my life, I didn't know that that was what was going on with me. And I think that this is partially why the church setting was not the best for my mindset, because it made me obsess over everything and every thought that I had. And I thought I would go to hell for any and everything. And given the fact that I read things for understanding, unlike a lot of people in the church, because you have to understand that a lot of people in church don't actually read. They just go in and they listen to the pastor and they take what they hear and they run with it, or they just have their select verses that they like to repeatedly use, right? So because of this, when I was younger and I had feelings or thoughts that were trans or gay, I automatically thought like, oh, well, like I'm gonna go to hell for this. I need to pray it away and everything. And now I'm telling you this from a spiritual perspective. You are not true to yourself and who you are and everything. And this is, and I'll reference a book down here. It's called Gender, really good book. But one of the things that this particular author was talking about was how you can pray it away, but it takes away life. You're not actually living. And because of this, for a very long time in my life was lived on autopilot. You have to understand, okay? So I remember specifically when I was like I might have been like 7 or 8. And I remember my mom was like watching a video on I don't know if y'all know the channel TLC, where people be having babies and surgeries and stuff. And what happened was is that at the time there was a person on there that was going through a gender affirming surgery. And I believe it was a female to male. And I was thinking to myself, like, holy shit, like, you can do this? Like, I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a boy. Like, I said this really young. And around the time my mom was watching this, and what happened was is that she was talking to my grandmother, and they were saying like, this is ridiculous, like people going to hell, this is wrong that they doing stuff like this. And and so because I heard all of that, I was like, oh, so this is bad. This is bad. So I put it on the back burner and forgot about it, because I was like, I'm not about to go to hell, and I didn't want to get in trouble for that, essentially, right? Please let me explain something to you, that no matter the amount of or anything that you pray it away or anything like that, like, the feelings will always be there. And the only difference, I will say, coming up in a world where especially like when I was younger, like gay wasn't as accepted, and things like that. Like being trans wasn't accepted. I didn't know anybody or see anybody really that was trans. We live in a different world now, and it's not like you can talk to anybody about it. And at the time, I did not have the vocabulary to express myself and to know what it was that I was feeling. And then the way that like other at the time women talked to me or girls talked to me, it kind of made me feel like everybody was feeling the same way. And you're probably like, well, how did that make you think that everybody felt the same way? The thing was is that everybody, women in general, always talk about how they hate their, and trigger warning for anybody that may be trans and you're watching this, I am going to talk about periods, but you know, most of them, most women usually say like, oh, I don't like it, I wish I didn't. My mom used to say stuff like, oh, it's just unfair, men don't have to deal with that. And so I took it from a perspective of, well, oh, so everybody don't want to do this, everybody wants that, and or the convenience of being able to stand up and pee. And I kind of thought that like everybody felt that way. And this is why like I didn't really question it because of that. The thing is that as I got older and now I noticed certain things that were happening that really didn't match up with like other kids I was with, or things that I thought was attraction was actually gender envy. And this is why for so long that I thought that I was bisexual, because I thought I was feeling attraction for men, but in reality I was experiencing gender envy. But again, I didn't learn this until like I was 29-ish. What started to happen after, because at one point I was married to a man. The thing was is that given that we would get together with people, would have like drinks or whatever, hang out, talk, sometimes like the ladies would go with the ladies and the men would go with the men. People would talk shit, especially over drinks. And I could never understand and relate to women when they were going like, oh, like, I'd like it when my man does this, and I have a really good time when, talking about, you know, I'm outside, I'm not about to be loud, my neighbors hear me and shit. I was thinking, like, okay, well, what's wrong with me that I'm not finding that same enjoyment? Because I didn't understand it, but what was crazy was when I talked about women, oh, I couldn't shut up. And I realized what it was because at the time, especially because I was with somebody that was verbally abusive, I thought like, oh, well, maybe the whole reason that like I really don't want it from him is due to the fact that he's mean to me. And then I realized that like, no, it was just that I didn't, I just didn't like men because I am a man. Time went on and everything, and after leaving him and whatnot, I had already decided like, well, I'm never gonna be with a man again, right? But then I ended up talking with like a really good friend. We would talk like every fucking day. And I had a lot of trance statements. And I've said this before, like even prior to talking to this friend, and I would say stuff like, man, like, because if I would have grew up in society now with how everything is on media, then I would be trans. My friend was like, well, you are like essentially growing up during this time. And that kind of fucked my head up. And then right before leaving my ex, I started like packing. And, you know, I'm like, okay, this is nice. And then eventually I ended up finding out about trans tape and I started using trans tape. And what was interesting for me that started to happen was, mind you, I didn't realize my entire life that I was experiencing dysphoria until I alleviated it. So let me please put that here too, because I see a lot of videos where usually people are kind of like, well, I always felt dysphoria. And the thing is that given all of the different factors going on with myself, with finding out now that I know that I'm autistic, that I have OCD, and that I have ADHD, that a lot of these things were kind of intermingling and it was hard to like pay attention to one at a time. I was disassociated most of my life and didn't realize that that's what was going on. And it was partially because of overstimulation. It was partially because of being dysphoric. What was happening after I like tried trans tape was after I took off the trans tape, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna reapply it. And I was kind of thinking of it at the time as like, okay, well, I'm just wearing this, and it just feels nice. And when I couldn't get the tape on, like, I went into a full blown fucking panic attack. Then I started to be a little bit mean to myself, and I was kind of going like, well, you wouldn't be having these problems if you wouldn't have tried it. You get what I mean? Like, if you wouldn't have tried out packing or wouldn't have tried out this, then you wouldn't be so dysphoric about it. But no, it, it was always there. It's just that now I'm more aware of it, especially being with him and being disassociated with my ex when I was with him. Then it left time for me to be able to get to know myself, because that was a very codependent relationship. Then I realized, like, and had memories of like certain things that were happening when I was younger. Like, I remember when my mom had like the birds and the bees talk with me, and then she told me, well, one day you're gonna get breasts. And I remember like looking in the mirror being so fucking disappointed about that and so upset about that. And I was messed up for like the rest of that night when she told me that, because it was something that I didn't want. I didn't really remember that until after like I started questioning, was it the right decision to go on testosterone. And at first I was on it because I was like, well, I'm gonna do a low dose, because you can't do low dose testosterone. And I was like, I'm just gonna do this because I really want bottom growth. If you don't know what that is, I will later on do another video talking about some of the changes I experienced, because I am gonna do more videos. So I was kind of like, well, yeah, like, that's all I wanted. And after I got on testosterone, that was when I realized that my entire life, that was the missing piece. That's what the fuck was wrong with me, why I didn't ever feel right, or like, I would constantly wake up and just be like, here's another day. And I didn't really realize that until after that. And then after being on a low dose for like so long, then I started to just bump it up, keep going up, and now I'm on a full dose. While I was aware of my dysphoria, um, by this point, even after I had top surgery, I realized how much it just felt like the breasts belonged to someone else. It felt like my entire life that somebody had took them and attached them to me. I didn't realize that until after the surgery. Now, for me personally, what took me to find out that I was trans was awareness. And really, a lot of this hit me like during the pandemic, and around that time I had a lot of time alone, and I hadn't been like separate from my ex like for a very long time, so it wasn't like I had time to get to know myself. And I got married to him really young. I was like 17. This was when I felt like I was dying. Like, I felt myself dying around this time. It was really strange. I had a drawing in my diary at the time that was like a man coming out of a wolf, right? Because it just felt like there was a different version of me ripping outside of the body that I was currently in. Still then, I didn't really piece it together. I was considering myself non-binary after I left for a little while, and then after being on T for a while, then I was like starting to get dysphoric that I wasn't seeing any more changes, and I wanted more changes. After I stopped seeing changes, this is when I was starting to get dysphoric. Like, man, like, I'm not getting no facial hair, like my voice ain't getting no deeper. And I was like, no. And I ended up going up, faced my fears about taking shots, because I can't stand shots, but I do a shot every week. But it takes the space of being aware. It takes the space of understanding that this has everything to do with what you want and not what other people want. And for a very long time, that was one of the things that I was worried about, because I started testosterone with a gel and it was low dose. And this was, like, nobody knew about it. And what I was afraid of was not the changes, because at first I was like, am I afraid of the changes? Am I afraid of the change? And it wasn't the changes. It was I was afraid of what everybody was going to say, or if people didn't want anything to do with me, you know? And I'm just saying this for people watching this, like I had to do a lot of deconstructing of religion, me personally. And this is why you see so many videos that I talk about stuff, because I talk about this not because I'm trying to convert people or anything like that. I talk about this because I was in a space where I could not talk to anybody about it, especially in church. I couldn't talk to anybody about spirituality in church, you know, because they tell you that, oh, you're opening portals and whatever the fuck else. This was stuff that, this is resourceful information to know that there is no hell. You can't care what other people think. There are so many people in life that their entire lives that they were worried about being disowned by others and not having friends and not having a family around. And I'm not trying to say that it's easy. Please understand, it is not easy. And I am fortunate enough that things were not as bad as they could have been for me, you know? I feel like, what type of life are you living if you're not living in your truth? It's gonna come back and bite you. It is. I'm 32 right now, and I'm telling you how I said I wanted to be a boy when I was 7, 8. And here it is that it came back. But the whole reason it came back is because of the lack of distraction and being aware and being grounded inside of my body. I'm posting this for people that were like me, that were, I used to be searching online for stuff or being confused how I felt and things like that. And hopefully whoever watches this, they are not in a space like I was, where it was a worry about going to hell or whatever, and church will brainwash you to the point where you just believe like, no, that's, these people are so messed up, God just has them thinking they're confused and whatever else. But I just want to say that, like, you know, I'm grateful that I'm openly trans now at 32. There's people that find out later, and that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's never too late. But I'm fortunate enough that I was able to live in my truth now. And I just made sure that, like, the thing is that the people that I was surrounded with were people that were supportive and helpful, and they made me think harder about it, and to have an understanding that this isn't some sort of curse or something that's an inconvenience. And when I say inconvenience, I mean in the sense of, I feel like, especially because of church and everything, they make it seem like the devil has a hold of your mind or something like that. And the thing is that I see it as a spiritual blessing, because here I am, in one lifetime I have been able to experience two genders, and there are beliefs of people that are trans, are like, they are, what's the word I'm looking for, thought on highly. If you look throughout certain things, if you do your research. And this is because you have two different perspectives. You know, I know what it's like to be a woman, but now I know what it's like to be a man. So I'm hoping that this video reaches the right person that needs to hear it. And I would love to hear your stories below if you want to talk about, like, if you came from church and being trans or anything like that. So yeah, but that's the end of this video. I will talk to you guys later. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.